Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Kerrie Jordan. Welcome to our show where we hear from manufacturing leaders who are driving the future of this great industry. Today, I'm speaking with Alexandre Georgetti, Director of Global Industry 4.0 Automation Strategy with Eaton. Now, you probably recognize Eaton. Eaton is an intelligent power management company dedicated to protecting the environment and improving the quality of life for people everywhere. Eaton makes products for the data center, utility, industrial, commercial, machine building, residential, aerospace, and mobility markets. By capitalizing on the global growth trends of electrification and digitalization, this organization is accelerating the planet's transition to renewable energy sources, helping to solve the world's most urgent power management challenges and building a more sustainable society for people today and generations to come. Now, Eaton was founded in 1911 and has been listed on the New York Stock Exchange for more than a century. The company reported revenues of $23.2 billion in 2023 and serves customers in more than 160 countries. Now, I'm looking forward to this conversation because my guest, Alexandre Georgetti, has over 20 years of experience in manufacturing, engineering, supply chain, logistics, and automation. He's a proven leader with expertise in international business and Industry 4.0 technologies. Alexandre, welcome, and thank you for joining the show.
Thank you, Kerrie. A pleasure to be here and talk to you today.
Wonderful. Well, as we get started, I'd love to get to know you a little bit more. Could you tell us about your role as Director of Global Industry 4.0 Automation Strategy at Eaton?
No, for sure. As this role, I lead our global automation efforts globally across hopefully 200 sites and across all the different businesses that we have inside the company. As we mentioned, we are a big company and a diversified company with different business. So my role is bring all the things together, leverage our expertise, and combine our efforts so we can advance our journey in a more faster way.
Wonderful. Now, I think a lot of people do recognize Eaton, but would you share a little bit more about who the company is and what the mission of Eaton is?
Yeah, we are a big company, as you said. Essentially, we have two big sectors inside the company. One we call electrical sector. That's where we produce a lot of the electrical components that goes inside our house. It goes to distribution center, essentially how we transfer power, how we manage power. And then we have another group, another sector, that's the industrial sector. That's where we produce components and systems from aerospace to the vehicle industry to filtration, and even for those ones that play golf, even the golf prize that goes on the clubs.
Nice. Thank you for giving us that overview. Now, you were recognized by SME, which is SME, the professional association serving U.S. engineers and other manufacturing professionals, as one of 25 leaders in smart manufacturing. Congratulations on such a recognition. What are some critical developments that you're seeing in Industry 4.0 automation?
There is a couple, and that's interesting because after my recognitions, just short after that, I was assigned to lead a transformation or a turnaround of a plant in Mexico, and then I just came back to this fascinating Industry 4.0 about a year ago. So, and it was interesting to leave the space for some time, come back and see a lot of changes that are happening. I would like to point, especially on the automation, about four points that are really see going to be game changers, are already game changers and going to continue to evolve. One of them is the humanoid. That may seem scary, but thinking about is like our body, but a completely robotic body that very soon we're going to be doing several different functions at our plants and also most probably at our houses too. So that's one. The second one, when we started deploying collaborative robots, it was essentially the arm of the robot, but now we also have the automated or the stereos hand. So now we are able to combine the hand with the arms of a collaborative robot and then perform very close, the same movements, the same touch that a human being can do. The other one that's progressing a lot is how we take all that I described and put on top of that artificial intelligence. So thinking about this, you may teach a robot how to do certain activity. And if you need to duplicate that in another site, in the old ways, you're going to need to teach that second robot to perform the same activities. With AI coming and all the learning associated with that, we are very close now to teach one robot and be able to just expand that knowledge to the other units. And the last one, we used to do a lot of programming, really writing codes to program all the movements of the robots. Then the collaborative robots brought the opportunity to just grab the arm of the collaborative robot, do the movements you'd like to do, and then that will generate the code. Now we have what we call teleoperation. So essentially, you put some gloves on your hands that's connected to a power unit, and that power unit is connected to the robot. So essentially, it's a human being doing the movements that you want to do, and then the robot automatically learns how to perform exactly the same or the same movement. So for me, those are the four most fascinating topics on this automation space that are already in the market and maturing at a very fast speed.
Fascinating for sure. I absolutely agree. It's so interesting to see how rapidly this is progressing and what potential it has for manufacturing. Now, I understand you have a focus on continuous improvement as well. I mean, and I could imagine that with these technologies, given the pace of technology, there's always this element of continuous improvement. How does that shape your approach to manufacturing automation?
That for me is like brothers and sisters. To be honest, prior on my previous role, I had both for one of the business before having the automation for the entire enterprise. And that was a nice combination because I'll just give you an example. You may want to automatize a certain process. So if you just try to automatize the process as it is, you may get certain results. But if you bring your continuous improvement hat and mindset, that's when you're going to start looking around that automation and start looking what I can do different here. How can I present my material in a different way? How I can position certain components in a different way, and then brings or that adds value and brings the combination of the two even more powerful to deliver the end results.
I agree. They are so closely tied, and I appreciate you describing it in that way. I like that you said like brothers and sisters, just so close. Now, can I ask you in regards to vehicle manufacturing environments? I understand you have experience here, and vehicle manufacturing has been in the news often. We all I think are very closely tied, to vehicle manufacturing. We all have cars in the driveway. Can I ask you, when it comes to specific automation challenges in regards to vehicle manufacturing environments, are there any that are, unique? And how do you address them when you see them arise?
Yeah, there is one when you think all the different products you produce, and especially as you mentioned, vehicles. We have a lot of vehicles in the market, and there is always the demand for those. So then this translates into what we call cycle time. So that means you need to produce a lot of products in a very short period of time. So naturally, the cycle time is being short, that drives additional challenges. How you can do those activities as fast or even better than a human being could do. So when you have more time, it's easier to do in an automated way. When you have shorter lead times or shorter cycle times, because you need to produce more in a short period of time, that brings challenges how to do that. But not only do that, how you can do those on and on in a way that the process repeats and repeats and repeats.
Now, if I can ask you, when it comes to where do you start? Because, what you're describing sounds like there is so much potential. There is, so much opportunity, but it can be difficult, especially with, as a manufacturing organization with a variety of different processes, maybe challenges across the business. How do you recommend to prioritize which manufacturing processes should be automated first?
We try to look on that from different angles. If you tell me there is a silver bullet, no, there is not a silver bullet in our opinion. I think there is a couple of factors, and some of that involve if there is a human being that needs to do repetitive movement. So we don't want people doing the same movement and on in very fast cycle times and then getting an injury. That's a factor that we take in consideration. The other one is about value added. We don't want a human being doing activities that don't bring value added, like just moving material from one point to another. Especially we know US, Europe, and even Asia Pacific, we are facing labor shortage. We like or not, the new generation, they don't like so much to work anymore in plants. So we try to look repetitive movements. We try to look activity that value added. You try to look on bottleneck process when you look for your entire value stream. Where's the restriction to be able to produce more? So we try to look on I'll call a basket of different factors, and then leveraging a criteria matrix that we have inside, give you some scores for all of those, and then prioritize based on the outcome of that.
That's great advice because to your point, it could depend on the risk, of safety within the shop floor, the repetitive movements, value based, the criteria, to determine the business outcome. Thank you for going through that. Now, if I could ask, do you have any examples, any specific examples where Industry 4.0 automation helped to solve a shop floor challenge, such as repetitive or anything else?
Yeah, I can give you, since I mentioned two things, one about repetitive and one about creating value. On the repetitive movement, we had a situation that we were producing components to the passenger car segment in one of our sites outside the US. And there was high production per hour. And a person has to place three components on every single product that we were producing. So thinking about a person placing three components, every product, on and on and on and we were able to take a collaborative robot with two arms and perform exactly the same movement as a person was performing and doing all that repetitive job with the collaborative robot while the operator could be relocated to a more value added, less repetitive environment. Another example was we have a manufacturing line where the operator finishes the product, packs the product, and he has to move all those products to another area so then could be shipped. But every time the person needs to do that or call for a forklift to do that movement, essentially we are losing the time and the expertise of that person to continue producing our product. So we are able to deploy autonomous mobile robots. Then as soon as the product is ready, the autonomous mobile robot comes, gets the product and delivers it to the shipping area while the human being continues to do his job.
Those are great examples. Now, given your international experience, and of course, with Eaton being a global manufacturing company, could you talk a bit about how implementing automation technologies might differ across global manufacturing facilities?
Yes, and that's an interesting question. As you go globally, for me, there are two important factors. One, different cultures look for automation in different ways, and different cultures have different ways to work with. So you need to be paying attention to those cultural aspects. The same way you do in one country is not necessarily going to work in the other one. And the second point is some countries, they are so-called high cost country. Some countries are more like not more ideal cost countries or lower cost countries. So when you are in a high cost country, there is naturally a higher pressure to drive automation, especially as those countries are the ones facing the highest labor shortages. So having that in mind, what's the real challenge of that particular country, and also knowing about the culture a little bit more helps to tie those elements and then drive projects to execution.
It's interesting. So much of our conversation goes back to humans, even though we're talking so much about automation and technologies. You just talked a lot about culture. It's fascinating. So, in the area of material movement and handling, this is an area that many of our listeners, must deal with, must manage, and it's an area that could have, I imagine, quite a lot of repetitive processes. So, how do you see autonomous mobile robots and cobots, sort of helping to transform that space?
There is a lot of things happening on this space, and that's a space that brings a lot of opportunities. And the one thing that we need to look in consideration too. So besides the labor shortage, we know if you are a human being, you don't want to be on the same position just doing that job over and over and over. And usually the material handling space is where you have more entry level salary. And then as you progress in terms of knowledge, you also increase your earnings. So it's a natural space to put time and to develop a solution. So then you can leverage those individuals in activities that are going to bring you much more value add. But the key to be successful in that space is you need to look on a couple of things. First, how the material you need to move is presented to you. Is that at a ground level? Is that at a certain height? Is that a square type of material? Is that a very tall material? How far you want to move? And how intense is your number of people walking the same aisles that those vehicles are going to go? So really trying to look from the entire environment before putting that together. One thing that was a big learning for us too is when you go material handling, don't just look only in one corner of your facility, because that corner may present one situation, the other corner may present a different one. And you don't want to get in a situation that you need to have two different brands of vehicles working together, because then you start adding complexity. Two different brands, two different softwares to communicate. So always try to look at the entire plant, even though you decide to start just one corner, but look at the overall flow and design your flow design, define the type of technology that you're going to use that can fit the entire environment.
So, speaking of ways to ensure success, I'd like to ask you about data analytics. So often when I'm talking about emerging technologies and advanced technologies, automation, with business leaders, it often comes back to data and understanding the data, getting insight into the data. What role does data analytics play when it comes to measuring and optimizing automation success?
For me, that plays before and after. Why before? Because you can collect data about your processes and how a human is today doing that job, and use that to simulate what's the right movement, what's the best movement for your automation to perform. And then you don't start on the try here, try there. So you already started one step ahead. And then as the process starts to run on this new environment, continue collecting the data, how that is performing, and then leverage the data then to optimize to the next level. That becomes really, really powerful. And that's one of the points that differentiates automation Industry 4.0. So you are doing the movements in an automatic way, but leveraging data to continue improvement. Or you are Industry 3.0, where essentially you just have a robot just load and unload, and you are not releasing all the power or all the benefit that you could do on that situation.
I see. And so when it comes to success, there's a balance, right? That must be struck in any initiative that an organization pursues. So when it comes to pursuing an automation investment, how do you balance that with your workforce development? How do you ensure that successful collaboration and that you're striking that right balance in investment?
Yeah, and I alluded a little bit about that. That regardless of the automation, still going to have the person or individuals to interface with that. So we try to look on both angles. We try to increase the capabilities of our team, even in a way that they can, if I put my CI or continuous improvement hat again, learning to see. So first, bring all that knowledge they can learn to see. They can help identify the opportunities and then continue developing this workforce, because more automation you put, more complexity you bring to the process, more skills you're going to need to have to keep those processes running. Doesn't matter if that's an operator that's very close to that, or that's a manufacturing engineering that needs to start thinking, okay, what's my next step? Or if I need to move that automation to another process, how can I do that? So comes from both angles.
Do you have a framework that you recommend business leaders look at when they're, maybe balancing these investments, looking at different automation technologies and helping to sort of put it all together as part of a cohesive system?
We have a framework that we continue to evolve, but a few points that I always mention about. One is from where your data is coming from and where your data is going to. If you have a lot of data sources, you bring a complexity to bring all those data elements together. If you have multiple brands of automation interfacing together, usually every automation brand brings its own software controls, brings its own fleet management software. So try to simplify as much as you can and try to have one brand or minimal amount of brands working together, because then you simplify all that interaction between them.
Great. That is great advice. And speaking of, based on your global manufacturing experience, what other advice would you give to leaders? Maybe those that are starting their Industry 4.0 journey, maybe those that have, already begun and need to take it to the next level. What sort of guidance do you give them?
We have a couple of learnings ourselves on this space. A couple of years ago, when we started, everybody was so excited to say, "Oh, this technology is cool. Whoa, this collaborative is cool." Don't go that journey. Don't go any technology just because it's cool. Go for a technology that is going to address a problem. So start from the problem, what you are trying to address, and then you pick the right technology or the right solution to address that particular problem. Another one is, you mentioned continuous improvement. So we know not everybody accepts technology in a easier way or as he or hers first step. So if you have one company with multiple sites, I'll go first to the sites where you already have that mindset. You already have a leadership there that's more open to the new things. And then as you are successful in that location, then you can use that example to the other locations and try to bring it then together to your journey. Another automation only coexist with a lot of elements. You need the humans, as we spoke. You need the operators. You need your safety personnel. You need your HR people to make sure the learning is there. You need to do the connectivity. So bring these cross-functional group of people to thinking about together, because then each one of us with particular backgrounds on certain functions, when we are together, we usually cover more things up front and get ready to deal with those things than trying to do after you already acquired the technology, you already installed, and that may be too late to have to do something different about that technology.
Great. Excellent guidance. Thank you so much. Now, this has been such a great conversation. It's a pleasure to learn from your experience. As we wrap up, for anyone who wants to learn more about you or about Eaton, where would you direct them?
You can find me at LinkedIn and maybe start from there, and then I'm more than glad to connect with everybody.
This has been wonderful. Alexander, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kerrie, for the opportunity, and thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right. That was Alexandre Georgetti, Director of Global Industry 4.0 Automation Strategy with Eaton. And to everyone listening, thank you for being a part of the future of manufacturing.